Hi. Today, I want to talk about Stoicism and language learning. So you may wonder why. Well, Stoicism, or the attitude of being a Stoic, is something that has had quite an influence on the history of thought and philosophy. And I think the whole issue of attitude and mindset is so important in language learning. It even determines how much time we spend with the language, which is an important part of language learning. It all stems from our attitude and mindset. So someone asked me the other day, do you think you have to be a Stoic? Do you think Stoicism is important for language learning? So I did some research, and of course, what we normally call Stoic is an adjective applied to someone who is sort of doesn't say much, doesn't respond much, is not very emotional, which is not quite what Stoicism is. Stoicism started with Zenon from Cyprus, actually, who was apparently a Phoenician Greek merchant, and he had his full cargo of goods lost in a storm, and he ended up in Athens, and he apparently was in a library and discovered some of the great thinkers of Greek philosophy, including, of course, Socrates, but others too, because there's a whole history of this sort of Stoicism, starting with the Cynics of 500 BC. Zenon lived at 300 BC. And he came to the realization that despite the tremendous loss of all his worldly goods, what really mattered to him was his values, his ability to control his emotions and his feelings and his grief, and to take solace, really, in his values and his virtues, the real values that matter, not the values of the goods that he lost. And he then started teaching his philosophy of, controlling your emotions, accepting those things that you can't control, and focusing on things that you can control. You can control how you react to things that happen to you, or he claims. You can control your own values, your virtues, things of this nature. So he was Stoic because of where he taught. He taught at the Stoa. I can't remember exactly, but it was an area somewhat covered with paintings on the walls. And the actual term in Greek escapes me right now, but it's not important. The word Stoic comes from the Stoa where he taught. And he has had quite an influence on philosophy, although this idea of self-control and not allowing external events to devastate us, but to rely more on our ability to cope with these sentiments. We find that in Buddhism, in Hinduism, apparently also in Christianity to some extent. So many philosophers have been influenced by this, or independently came to the same conclusion that self-control is how we should lead our lives. It requires more discipline. It requires a sense of duty. And these are some of the things, of course, that we see in the Stoic emperor of Rome. And there were a number of Roman Stoic philosophers, Epictetus amongst others, Seneca. And, of course, Marcus Aurelius, in his writings, also reflects the same philosophy of accepting things that we cannot control and focusing in on our discipline, our sense of duty, our humility, values that are more important than anything that other people can do to us. One of the problems with this, it's an admirable philosophy, but how does this apply to language learning? Well, I think in language learning, we have to accept that we cannot always control how well we're going to do, how well we're going to understand, how people will react to us when we speak the language, how often we'll make mistakes or pronounce poorly, or how slow, perhaps, or uneven our progress in the language will be. We just have to kind of stay the course. We have to believe in what we're doing, in the righteousness, if you want, of our decision to learn a language, and not worry too much about how well we might be doing or how we might be judged by other people. So to that extent, sort of a Stoic attitude, I think, is a helpful attitude to have. And I should add, we're living at a time when there are a lot of unsettling events in the world. And so even in terms of how we lead our lives, it's important not to react too much to the latest bit of misinformation that's spread on social media, but rather to control those things that we are in a position to control. Now, one philosopher, French philosopher, who was influenced by the Stoics, but isn't himself a Stoic philosopher, but whom I find very, relevant to language learning, is Montaigne. And I mentioned Montaigne in my book, The Linguist on Language. And Montaigne was, I think, initially a political figure in southwestern France in the 16th century, at a time when religious wars were creating mayhem and death and so forth in France. And he would withdraw to his tower, famous Tower of Montaigne, which was his library, surrounded by books. And on the walls, apparently, were, the sayings of the Greek and Roman philosophers, including, of course, Stoic philosophers, but not only. But Montaigne said, Stoicism is a bit extreme because it expects the person to be almost a saint. In other words, to control their emotions, control their passions, suppress their desires. And Montaigne felt that this was not natural, that human beings are imperfect. Human beings are sometimes better, sometimes worse, and that positive emotions are a good thing. And so while he would withdraw from the world into his library, he didn't think that we should require this rigid sense of self-abnegation. And the other thing is, Montaigne felt curiosity is very important. The idea that you want to expand your knowledge, and you never know everything. And also that you cannot master everything, or anything for that matter. And so vis-a-vis language learning, he would probably take the position that you can't master the language, you can't master the grammar, but you can enjoy it. You can almost walk alongside, accompany, coexist with what you're learning without having unrealistic demands of what you can learn or what you can achieve or what you can master. When we are learning a language, we don't know how well we're doing. But if we're enjoying it, and if we feel that we are learning about things, like I can learn about things, through the content that I study on Link, which is a little difficult for me, I have a sense, as long as I'm doing it, I am improving, but I have no sense of how well I'm improving. I'm kind of accompanying myself, almost detached from my language learning experience, no expectations as to how well I will do. I just will accept however much I do achieve, and I am enjoying the process and feeding my curiosity, and all of that is positive. So I kind of think we can soften the Stoic message a little bit by perhaps being more in tune with the philosophy of Montaigne, who says we are imperfect, we're changeable, we're not always the same, we want to learn and enjoy life. And I think that's the approach. That's how I would soften Stoicism, and so have a kind of a combined Stoic and yet realistic approach to language learning. And so that would be my answer to this person who asked me, what's the relationship between Stoicism and language learning? Thanks for listening.